Yep. Hi everyone. We're just here today in the Malabar Interpretation Centre with paleontologist Matt Hearn. I just have a few questions for him about his background in paleontology and some of his research. Just might start off just asking a little bit about yourself.
Sure.
And your work.
Well, I started off in paleontology when I was very young. I was a kid. I just loved dinosaurs and everything natural history, I guess you have to say. And when I was about 10 years old, I was living in Western Australia, and there's a famous Australian paleontologist called Mike Archer, and Mike is known for his work at Riversley, further north from here, and he was doing his PhD at the West Australian Museum, and I was this kid who was just dead keen. And so he took me in and taught me how to identify fossil bones of all sorts. Yeah. And so that's what I used to do on my holidays. And eventually I found that I needed to pursue paleontology professionally. Yeah. And that led to doing, a degree in zoology, and then an honours degree, and then eventually a PhD.
Yeah. Sounds good. As a paleontologist, what exactly do you do?
It's a really mixed world in paleontology. There's two directions you can come from. You can either be a biologist, so in my case I was a zoologist, and it sort of collides with geology. Yeah. So it's about the Earth's history and life in that geological history. So as a paleontologist, I'm very keen and interested in the rocks, in their history, how they formed, how they were deposited, and the carcasses of the bones of animals that actually died and got preserved in those rocks. Yeah. So it's a fantastic science in that it takes these different disciplines, quite spread disciplines, and it brings them together. So that's, as a paleontologist, that's what gets me up in the morning, is that looking for discoveries in the geological and biological world.
Yeah, That's really good. So next question. Might as well tackle the elephants or the dinosaur in the room, I suppose we should say.
Yeah.
One of your big interests that I've kind of gathered is that you are really interested in the Malabarosaurus. Could you tell us a little bit about the Malabarosaurus?
Well, my interest in Malabarosaurus kind of evolved out of my PhD. So carrying on from your last question about my PhD, what I actually did in my PhD was I worked on small-bodied ornithopod dinosaurs. So ornithopod dinosaurs are a group within the dinosaurs called bird-hipped dinosaurs. And the ornithopods are bird-footed dinosaurs. Malabarosaurus is one of those dinosaurs, but I worked on the small-bodied cousins of Malabarosaurus that were found in rocks in the southern part of Australia, in Victoria. Yeah. And these little cousins of Malabarosaurus led me into the work later.
You just kind of covered your doctorate thesis there a little bit, I believe.
A little bit. Yeah. What I could say is it's fascinating. It's a fascinating world because the south coast of Victoria has rocks. I don't know people in the audience that have been down to the south coast, in the Otways and the Strzelecki region. There are rocks of around 110 to 130 million years of age. And these rocks were laid down in the giant Rift Valley that formed between Australia and Antarctica. So at that time, Australia and Antarctica were actually joined at the hip. Yeah. And they were spreading apart. It was a rift valley, so that means they were rifting apart, but there was still a valley of land between the two continents. And it was at the time of the dinosaurs, and it was riverine floodplain perfect sort of land for dinosaurs
Yeah.
to thrive and exist in. It was a polar climate, but it was probably quite temperate and
Yeah.
maybe even warm. And so it was a perfect place for dinosaurs to evolve. And we mainly find little dinosaurs down there for some odd reason.
Yeah.
And the little cousins of Metabarosaurus were in those rocks.
Yeah.
And that's what I worked on in my PhD.
Really interesting. And I think we'll end off with one last question. This is just about your current research. To my understanding, you're currently looking into the hidden anatomy within the skull of the Metabarosaurus.
Yeah. So I'm actually going to do a presentation soon on that. But what I will say is that when Metabarosaurus was originally described back in the early 80s, paleontologists didn't have the technology available to them that we do now, and particularly CT scanning. It's been fantastic. So Alan Bartholomew, who originally described Metabarosaurus, and Ralph Molnar, all they could do was describe the skeleton and particularly the skull superficially.
Yeah.
But it's in a ruddy great lump of limestone, so you can't really peer inside. Now we can. So I ran the skull through CT, and also bits and pieces of the skull were run through synchrotron scanning in Melbourne, and neutron scanning at Lucas Heights in Sydney, to actually look at the internal anatomy of the skull. So I've been able to look at the brain, believe it or not. The brain isn't actually preserved, but it's the clay, if you like, the mud that filled in where the brain would have been. There's a gap, and that's filled in perfectly into where the brain was. And all the ear canals, all the cranial nerves, they're all preserved in clay. So CT scanning allows me to take those bits, turn them into a 3D digital model, and I could even 3D print these, and I can describe the brain. And from that, I'm able to talk and examine the behaviour, for instance.
Yeah.
So when you look at the brain of an animal, you can tell a lot about its behaviour and how it lived. That's its senses. So actually, in my little presentation, I'll actually give you a snapshot of that. Even though this work isn't yet published, it soon will be, and I want to actually show you some of this.
Wow. Yeah, that's really, really interesting.
It is.
Yeah, that's I think that was actually the last question I had. So that's it for today. Thank you so much for coming along and
Thanks
answering
very
those
much.
questions. And 5 o'clock, guys, for the talk.
5 o'clock.
5 o'clock. Be there.
Thank you.